April 5th, 2026. We are in the 5th year, day 41 since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Welcome to the Situation Report. In today's report, we'll take a look at the current Russian offensive. We'll also look at what the Ukrainians are reporting in terms of shoot-downs. And of course, we'll also look at other drone strikes, as well as much more. But before that, take a quick look here. There's someone who thought they could create a Telegram channel using my name. Yes, obviously this channel is not from me. There's quite a lot of AFD content here. Pro-Russian content is being spread here, and people are also being encouraged to join some crypto groups. The channel is definitely not from me, but it uses my name and my logo. So please do me a favor, go to Telegram, report this channel, because the more people report it at the same time, the sooner Telegram will remove it. So thank you very much for your support. I know I can count on you just like I always could. By the way, you can find the original one-tag Telegram in the video description or through this QR code here. While I was rearranging my workspace a bit, I found this again. It reminded me of my early days, and of course I just wanted to share that briefly. This was a gift from a viewer that I received back when I reached 10,000 subscribers. As you can see, that was in May 2023, so almost exactly 3 years ago. And that was quite a different time. We remember many offensives. It was just before the Ukrainian summer offensive. And what we also know is that back then, the war was much more present, especially in the media or in the minds of many people. I started the channel mainly reporting on Ukraine around February 2023. So you see, it took a total of 4 months for me to reach 10,000 subscribers, which nowadays would just be a small dream. But you shouldn't always just look to the past, you should also look to the future. Because just like here on the YouTube channel, many things have changed since then, especially in the war, as we will see today. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense states that Russia is said to have lost around 35,000 soldiers in the past month. Extrapolated, this corresponds to a constant loss rate of about 1 soldier killed every 74 seconds, and that's around the clock. Such numbers should always be viewed with caution, of course, because they come from the warring parties themselves. But what they do show is the scale at which this war of attrition is now taking place. Over 80% of the losses are said to have been caused by drones. According to this, artillery and airstrikes, self-inflicted injuries and accidents, and then gunshot wounds make up the remaining 20%. Despite the losses, neither side is really making any progress. On the Ukrainian side, things are set up pretty much the same as on the Russian side. Here too, most of the injuries and deaths are caused by drones. You can now clearly see there are far fewer reports and videos from the front than in previous years, as shown in the situation reports. I can show far fewer videos of attacks because there are far fewer attacks. At the same time, it is reported that the Russian offensive has noticeably lost momentum, if it ever gained any at all. Especially in the Pokrovsk area, which was long considered an axis of attack, activity has apparently decreased significantly. Instead of the almost daily attacks seen before, there is now significantly less movement. The reason given is that the Russian units deployed are under heavy strain. After the intense fighting of the past weeks, they are said to be significantly weakened both in personnel and equipment, which directly affects the frequency of attacks. And that fits the overall picture. When an offensive runs for a longer period without achieving decisive breakthroughs, this exact point is eventually reached. That means less pressure, longer pauses between attacks. This is exactly what seems to be emerging here right now. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, what is he talking about? The offensive has only been going on for 3 weeks. Yes and no. Russia has been at it since the 24th, since February 2022, Russia has been in a kind of ongoing offensive, which has been divided into different phases. Just like this one, they even have a separate offensive name for each season. There's the spring offensive, the summer offensive, the autumn offensive, and also a winter offensive. And that's every year. There is hardly a month in which they haven't tried to launch a massive attack or break through somewhere, and there hasn't been any extended period without some kind of offensive action. And that's exactly what's wearing them down now. And we can see that too. Reports indicate that the density of Russian troops in the Zaporizhzhia sector is now only a third of what it was 6 months ago. That's not a minor shift, but a clear cut in the available force. When regiments are withdrawn, it's not just a matter of less presence, but specifically larger gaps between units, longer rotation cycles, and fewer reserves to respond to pressure. Exactly these factors ultimately determine whether a line remains stable or starts to crumble. Of course, if we keep in mind that the Russians are currently launching a larger offensive on the Eastern Front. At the same time, however, they are not recruiting more soldiers than before and are losing more than they can recruit. And in addition, many regiments and other subunits are not fully staffed. And for an offensive, ideally, you need more soldiers than the opposing side. Then it's obviously clear that the Kremlin can't just pull them out of a hat without a mobilization. So we inevitably have to withdraw other units for the offensive, which in turn means that other sectors are less well covered than before. So why are they taking soldiers from the Zaporizhzhia area here? It's quite simple. Let's take a look a bit further east, because there are really only two areas here: Kherson, Crimea, and Zaporizhzhia, and the rest would actually be the Eastern Front, where currently there are limited offensives taking place on the Russian side everywhere. So moving people from there doesn't make sense if you need them here for attacks. Crimea is currently quite calm. There are hardly any subunits left here that belong to combat units. These are mainly just parts of the Black Sea Fleet, which still has its headquarters here in Sevastopol. At this point and elsewhere, these are mainly just anti-aircraft units, as well as parts of the Russian aerospace forces, which are present here at various airfields. Then, in the end, what is still occupied by combat units in this area is Kherson. Kherson is an area that is largely covered by water, so here we have the Dnipro River, which runs through here. We have the sea here, which lies to the south and west. That means it's pretty difficult for the Ukrainians to gain a foothold here. They can't get any closer from the east either, because the neighboring oblast has been occupied by the Russians. A Ukrainian offensive at this point is therefore very unlikely, which is why the Russians station their so-called bad subunits there. Of course, there are no bad subunits. They all have a purpose and a function. What I mean by that are more like subunits that are at less than about 30% manpower, or units that can't be used at the front right now. For example, when a tank regiment no longer has any tanks, or a communications unit has no communication equipment, and so on. Units that also have a lot of disabled soldiers and do more harm than good at the front are all being sent to Kherson as well, because they're still good enough for defending the river, but not really for the front. For this reason, these subunits are not really worth withdrawing from here, since they won't really make a difference at the front. Zaporizhzhia, on the other hand, has units that are more expendable, because the Surovikin line is also located here. That's the Russian defensive line that was built under Surovikin, which is why it bears his name, and it held up the Ukrainian summer offensive in 2023. That means the strong fortification line ensures that they need fewer units on the defensive without running the risk of being overrun here. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are using a defensive strategy along their own defensive line in this sector. Two things currently suggest that they can withdraw the units from here and move them to the Eastern Front. However, this shouldn't be taken too lightly. The Ukrainians themselves are currently busy here conducting their own offensive, and of course they could also expand it. Although I don't think they will try to advance further here along the Surovikin line, which is really well fortified. Instead, if anything, they will first try to establish themselves here at this former defensive line, which they lost in September 2025. Apparently, new Russian satellite communication systems have appeared at the front. Specifically, a Spirit 030 terminal was spotted, which is used for data transmission and command in the combat zone. The system was discovered by drone pilots. The satellite communication systems, the 414th Brigade, the Ukrainian Drone Elite Brigade, specifically targeted it and destroyed it with a drone strike. Such systems are central to modern combat operations because they enable stable communication even without traditional infrastructure. Especially in an environment where electronic interference plays a major role, satellite-based connections are an important factor. The fact that such a system was disabled relatively quickly shows two things at once. On the one hand, that technology for drone pilots is increasingly being brought to the front lines, and on the other hand, how vulnerable such hubs are once they have been located. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense states that in March 2026, it engaged more than 150,000 Russian targets. Just for context, that includes everything: tanks, aircraft, soldiers, drones, trailers, vehicles, and also equipment. For example, if you destroy a Wi-Fi antenna or, like just now, a satellite communication system, that counts as well. Old Starlink terminals would also be included. At the same time, it is reported that interceptor drones in particular have improved significantly, especially in operations against Shahed and Gerbera drones. These are numbers you really have to take a moment to comprehend. 150,000 targets in 1 month. That's no longer a normal combat rhythm. That's continuous industrial attrition. It becomes even clearer when you look at the drones. Over 33,000 downed systems were mentioned. If we assume an interception rate of about 70 to 80%, that means, conversely, that significantly more drones are being launched. Which means for us that the Russians have used significantly more than 33,000 drones to attack Ukraine within a month. That means we're no longer talking about small attack waves here, but about a constant threat from the air, day after day, night after night. And even a well-coordinated air defense can't completely prevent this, only limit it. And that means for us that this will be very relevant. Because what's happening there is no longer a state of emergency, but a taste of a modern new kind of warfare that we didn't know before. The combination of mass, inexpensive systems and constant availability presents enormous challenges, even for well-dispersed and prepared structures. And that's exactly what's going to be relevant for us. Because if we're being honest, Germany wouldn't even be able to withstand a scenario of this magnitude for a month at this level of intensity right now, neither structurally, materially, nor organizationally. And that's exactly why time is slowly running out, not just to observe such developments, but to finally take action based on them. In the region of Nizhny Novgorod, Kherson, the oil refinery in Stovo has been hit. There is currently a large-scale fire on site. Footage shows massive smoke rising over the area. The facility is among the key processing sites in central Russia. The strike there shows that structures in the hinterland can still be hit. It's currently not possible to say how severe the damage is. With refineries, a lot depends on which areas were hit. So whether it's a warehouse, a secondary storage facility, a plant, or a central processing unit. However, a persistent fire suggests that the situation is still not under control. At this point, I can only say that there will be no situation report tomorrow. However, there will be a replacement video. That's because I'll be at the opera and won't be able to make it. With that, I want to thank all subscribers, channel members, and the Algen crew. Special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Renicky, Silatitich, Ferdy, and Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you at the next situation report.